And that's a nice segue into what we're going to be discussing throughout this webinar. So without ado, we'll get started here. So the hand consists of 27 bones. So that has the option, so you have the ability to hurt your hands and different bones within your hand very easily. And the OSHA reports that more than 320,000 sibling hand injuries happened in 2013 across all of industries. And then 200,000 of those injuries were from the private sector. So how much does a hand injury cost? What we've determined is that it comes down to $22,384 is the average cost per injured worker. And what that entails is really basically the time off, other people helping that person to get better, obviously cost of rehabilitation, and depending on the hand injury. So we just kind of say that's an average, but it's a pretty big number per person if we think about the numbers. So an easy way to get around that is just to have a good hand protection program for sure. So best practices, when we're talking about hands and hand safety programs, we suggest that everybody reviews their hand policies every couple of weeks. Some companies are doing it every 3 months, some maybe every year. What happens is, people are repetitive, they like repetitive information. So especially that information, if you can repetitively put it through to the employees' minds, they remember it. And this also reduces hand injuries. So within that, we talked about doing maybe a glove review for your company, looking at talking to your employees and asking them, what they like, what they don't like about the gloves, and that's something that you can set up with Levitt-Safety and Superior Glove to come in and do a glove review for your company, and that's something that we would suggest. And I think at the end of the webinar, you're going to have an opportunity to set that up. Basically, what we'll do is we're going to come in and we would look at each of the areas within your company and basically just open a discussion, really, and then follow up with some free samples, and then get the employees' feedback on it in a nutshell. Okay. So when we talk about choosing the proper hand protection, sizing is very, very important, especially with today's gloves and how they're much tighter fitting. You want good dexterity. You want to make sure that there's no loose ends at the end of the glove. Maybe they get caught in different machines. Also, you want to talk about what kind of environment you're in. What type of chemicals are going to be associated with the job. You want to make sure that you have the proper coating on it. Or if there's no chemicals, obviously you don't need necessarily a specific coating, but you just have to deal with other issues. Comfort is a huge thing when it comes to for gloves. That's for sure. If your employees are not comfortable, it doesn't matter what you're going to give them, they're not going to wear the gloves. So I know when we do hand evaluations and stuff like that within companies, we give multiple sizings to the companies, and they can actually try it, and the customers can feel it and get good feedback on their wish list. Then we talk about grip. So what that entails really is, is there water involved? Is there oil involved? So we ask all these pertinent questions about the job that person is doing. And then we look at the overall cost benefit and the designs and what have you. And maybe even in some cases we can alter our gloves to fit your specific need. We've done that in the past, and we can do that as well. But that's something that we have to evaluate and go from there. So this is just an example of when we talk about chemical resistance materials. This is just kind of something that we would fall back on, and we look at the different types of materials, the latex, the vinyl PVCs, the nitriles, and where they fit in terms of that chemical. So again, that's something that we would ask in the process of doing the hand evaluation. What are they doing? Are they handling propane tanks and what have you? So we would just really delve into that aspect of the glove and the performance of it. So when we talk about palm coatings, this question comes up quite a bit when I'm out in the field. Palm coatings, there are multiple different types of coatings, and when we talk about if there's oil or water, or if it's a dry grip they need, if they need non-marring, different coatings will affect those applications. If, for instance, as an example, if you have a high oily part, you're going to need something that's going to have like a foam nitropalm on it, which are pretty prevalent these days out in gloves. A lot of gloves I see out there would be a PU coating. That PU coating is very good for dexterity, but not very good in oil. Again, when we do our glove evaluation, that's something that questions that we'll be asking, and also viewing the process so that we can better help you and your employees with a glove selection. Cut resistance is a big thing out there. We always follow the ASTM standard, but most cut-resistant gloves these days have a CE rating on the back, which is the European cut level. So there's a bit of a confusion out there, and I won't get too much into it. But in terms of the ASTM standard, it basically comes down to grams of weight and how much grams it would take to cut through a glove. The CE rating, on the other hand, the European standard uses one standard load. But that has changed a little bit in 2016 with a new standard for CE and ASTM, where the two now have kind of come closer together, and hopefully the difference between the two aren't as drastic as it used to be, which is ultimately better for the employees and the companies. So when we talk about the levels now, they used to be, prior to 2016, it used to be basically 1 to 5. Now we've extended they've extended it from 1 to 9. And the primary reason for that is that, as an example, for instance, from cut level 1 to cut level 2 in the olden days, you'd have roughly 500 grams. So we've used that as an example from 2 to 3, let's say another 500 grams. But what happened was in cut level 4 to 5, you had like 2,500 grams of cut. So one cut level 4 would be significantly different than another cut level 4. So they basically expanded the cut level 4 to 5 standard and made it now 1 to 9. And now the new standard would be A1, A2, A3, A4, A5. So it really is a benefit to the industry and the employees wearing the gloves, because now you can be better assured that the glove that you're wearing is the glove that you need. So this, again, is we're just kind of talking about the ANSI levels and the different grams. You'll see in the top of the information beside the A1 or A4 or A7, you'll see how much grams it takes to cut through those gloves. Now, one thing we always got to keep in mind is that cut-resistant gloves are only cut-resistant, not cut-proof. So that's something that I get told, or everybody says, I need a cut-proof glove. Well, I'm not sure if there's anything really out there. You have steel mesh, but even steel mesh can be cut through as well. So it's something that no matter what kind of cut level glove you have on, you still got to be very careful in terms of what you're doing. So again, education, reviewing your hand protection program every 2 weeks is always a great suggestion, that's for sure. So if we look at engineered yarns, and this is something that's come into the forefront in the last, I'd say maybe 10 years, and it's gotten to the point where it's commonplace now, whereas 10 years ago it wasn't. You have two competing fibers essentially, or three really. You've got DuPont Kevlar, you've got Dyneema, and you've got basically steel. There's some other yarns as well, but I'd say three of those are pretty much the main targets for people that want cut resistance. Now, each of those products as a base fiber only really equate to a cut level A2. So when we get into engineered yarns, that's where we twist the Kevlar with steel and maybe fiberglass to increase the tensile strength and cut resistance of that fiber. So then that cut level A2 from, let's say, a DuPont Kevlar jumps to a cut level A4, A7, A8, and now we're even getting into A9s in a high dexterity glove. So how a glove is engineered is really the science of gloves. You can have some pretty inexpensive gloves that aren't twisted properly. I know most of our yarns are twisted over 100,000 times per, maybe a couple of inches to get it sealed and covered properly. If not, what happens is sometimes you might get a breakage, and that's where you get, itching and what have you within the gloves. So cheap is not necessarily always the best way to go, that's for sure. So when we look at cut-resistant gloves and how they measure up, you'll see on this list, leather is right at the bottom. I do get a lot of that. People in high-cut areas, especially in the metal industry for some reason, they're handling this sharp metal with leather gloves. So if you think about leather, leather is much like your skin. It's not very cut-resistant. So that's kind of the reason why it's right at the bottom. It's very good for puncture. Maybe that's the misconception, is that puncture is very good for leather, but cut resistance, when it slides, it's not at all. And then the next is latex. Cotton's above leather, and the reason for that is when you knit a cotton glove, you have all those fibers, and the actual blade will spin with the fibers. So that's why a cotton glove is higher than a leather glove. And then you get into your synthetics, like I mentioned, your DuPont Kevlars, your Dyneemas, your HPPEs. And then you get into your high-performance engineered yarns, and that's where all those synthetic fibers then are twisted with other yarns to give it more strength and higher abrasion. And that's the other thing that, too, we want to keep in mind, too, is that you can have a high cut level glove, but if the abrasion is not very high, you're going to run through that glove very quickly. So again, on a glove review, this is kind of some of the questions that we would answer or ask each of the companies about what they're doing. Is abrasion very high, or is that a concern, or is it really just a slicing effect? Is it a straight blade, or is it kind of rough? All these things add into will be the questions that we would ask, and we'd need answered. So I know I've talked about glove reviews quite a bit, but one of the benefits of it, obviously, we're in the industry. We know we've seen many different applications. We've probably answered that question a million times already, so that's something that we can bring to the table. We do offer the free samples, so you'll basically try the products out before you actually buy them, which makes sure that the employees are on board. And it's cost-effective for your company. And then 3, we also do a follow-up. We make sure that what we put in place, 2 months down the road, it's still good 2 months down the road, which is very important. I also want to share some of these, some stats with you. A lot of times, and these stats actually were supplied to me by Matt Burton in our marketing department, and they're really interesting to kind of take in and kind of understand that most companies that have high cuts in their factories are really the smaller companies. So anything like less than 100 employees, you have a higher 40% more likely to have hand injuries. So that might be something, whereas the bigger companies maybe are reviewing more, where that's probably ultimately what it is. They have more money to maybe put into the program, but that's something that we can help you out. So that's kind of an interesting stat, which I thought. And then the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, cut lacerations account for 30% of all workplace injuries. So 70% of those weren't even wearing gloves. So just by putting a glove on your hand, it doesn't have to be the most expensive glove in the world. It just has to be a glove of some sort. And that would also lower your hand injuries significantly. So again, just to refresh, the regular review of your gloves is an important step in making sure that your employees are safe, and that's something that's going to help, with your employee morale, comfort, and overall productivity. So what we're now going to do is we're going to open up to some question and answers, and then go from there.
Okay, the first question we have coming in is. We have a cut level 4 glove in stores. Do they need to be replaced? I'm guessing that has to do with the change to the cut level standards.
Well, I mean, that's something that, again, in the review that you might want to look at. As I mentioned, the old standard, the cut level 4, had a significant difference in terms of levels, in terms of how much grams of weight. So In a review, we could look at it, and if you do need to have a higher cut, you can. But in most cases, those new standards aren't going to come into place for over 5 years. So as the gloves come up every 5 years, they're going to have the new standard on it. So again, probably a glove review would be best answer that question.
Second question here is, did it audit a few years ago? When would you recommend doing it again?
Well, that's a good question. Again, based on what we talked about, we want as much review as possible. In terms of glove audits, they're pretty intense and they're pretty in-depth. So I think a glove review every year probably would be recommended. Employees change, obviously, so that's important. Machinery changes all the time. I know in the automotive industry, the metal that's going into cars is much thinner than it was maybe even 5 years ago to save weight, which would increase the hazard of being cut. So I think every year would be suggested, and then review it internally with your health and safety rep, your Levitt-Safety rep, and on a regular basis, and let them help you.
What glove protection do you have for needle stick injuries with part-type staff that are weeding and trimming and finding an increased number of used needles?
It's a good thing. We sell a lot of our punk band line into the cities. Anybody that has concern with needle stick, we have a product, and it's called our punk band line. If you go to our website at superiorglove.com or into Ask Your Levitt sales rep, they can help you with that. We can come by with some samples and show you. But again, much like cut resistant gloves, needle stick are only resistant, not proof. So you got to keep that in mind.
Another question, given each cut level, how can the workers understand what cut level they should be using for a given job, as grams of pressure is somewhat abstract in the field?
Good question. That's something that each company is going to have to, we get asked that question, if I'm using this, what cut level should I have? Your health and safety rep within your company is really the key in terms of setting the level, what you should be wearing. We can help and make suggestions, but I think obviously for me, I would suggest the highest cut level glove you have, you could get for the price that you're looking for would be your best bet. For sure. But again, that's an internal question, I think, and that's something that your company is really going to have to focus in on and figure out, based on this task, we want a minimum of cut level 4. Again, we can help out and say, we've had other companies that are similar to yours use this kind of cut level, so it would be definitely something to just talk amongst within your own company with that.
The other thing I would recommend doing as well is doing a glove board, sorry. So you have certain jobs highlighted with a board saying use this glove with an example of the glove. It's another way to make workers understand what they should be using for given tasks rather than just doing random cut level 4 for this. It gives a visual representation. That's
an excellent addition. I know we run into that quite a bit, so it just takes it the guessing game altogether.
Is it possible to get a copy of the slides? We're going to have this copy of the webinar itself available. Everybody's going to get an email with the link afterwards. Another question, how do you size employees up properly?
Ultimately the best way to size employees are really just try the gloves on. But we do have, at superiorglove.com, we do have a sizing chart that you can print off, and it goes on an 8x10 piece of paper, and you just basically put your hand on it, and it gives you a suggested size to trial. But gloves are much like clothing. Everything fits a little differently. There's no one standard size for gloves. So that's where I suggest it, really just giving it a shot and trying different gloves on. Most cases, if you're a large, you're going to be a large throughout, but I've seen other gloves where they fit tighter and some fit a little larger. It all depends.
Another question, a glove review. Are you/we looking for one type of glove that would work for all employees, or are we customizing for each task?
Customization, I know I can speak to obviously Superior Glove we have 3,000 SKUs in our line, so we've pretty much probably already figured it out at that point. But In the recent years, we've actually added leather thumb crotches to dexterity gloves, which gives very high abrasion and high in the high wear area. You're going to have the extra protection. So in terms of glove review, we're going to look and we're going to say a good, better, and best solution for each of the areas that we talk about. So it's really just it's an open discussion forum.
The other question is the slide or the chart on the cut levels and typical uses available after the webinar. That will be part of an email that will get sent out afterwards. Another question we have here is we are an electrical contracting company. Been purchasing your 10 active ASTM level 4 glove. Our workers like the comfortability, however the palm coating lasts only a few days. How do I get in touch with you to arrange a custom coating? I would
maybe just call into our customer service and ask them to get in touch with me, and we can arrange that another later date. It sounds to me like maybe you're using our foam nitrile palm, which is our black 18 gauge glove, and we could probably go to a PU coated glove, which wouldn't have as much air in it, which will give you the higher abrasion level. But there's some other products we have that would be well. So just call our customer service department and maybe get the information to them, and then I'll give you a call and follow up with you on that one for sure.
Have you ever dealt with people in animal control? Sometimes the gloves they use are bulky and hard to grasp things, i.e. close the latch on portable dog cages.
Yes.
Is there anything you are aware that would work for these folks that is flexible yet puncture resistant from dog, cat bites, claws, etc.?
That's a question, you've got a two-pronged effect on that one. You've got the sharpness of their teeth, but you also got the strength of the jaw. So you've got a crushing hazard, plus you've got a puncture hazard in that one. So from a puncture standpoint, our punk band stuff would work, give the dexterity that they need. But obviously, if you need something that's going to have a crushing effect on it, there's some other products that that we could probably get into that might work as well. But it's just that's a tough one to get through. That's for sure.
I guess the answer there would be really the best case is getting a review and getting in to try a few different gloves on, because for finding that balance between protection and dexterity can be a little bit tricky and could be a little bit of a preference style thing.
Yeah, engage your Levitt rep, and then they can work with the superior reps to come in and just kind of discuss different avenues for sure.
Last question I have is work with oily metal pieces. What glove coating would be best?
So back to that gentleman that was wearing our cut level 4, he's probably using a foam nitrile, and that's something that for an oily application I would recommend. Oily materials, it needs to absorb into the glove a little bit, much like, let's say we've used an example of a tire in the wet weather, how it kind of sips the water away. Again, a foam nitrile glove palm will do the same thing in an oily application to a certain point, obviously. You might have to wipe the glove off eventually. It can only soak up so much oil. But foam nitrile or porous nitrile would be probably 20% better than even the foam nitrile, just because when you look at it under a microscope, you're going to have more like a suction cup material as opposed to where the oil is going to just absorb into the glove and soak the glove up a little bit. So a foam nitrile palm for sure would be the best way to go.
Okay, we have one more question that came in here. Can you recommend a class of glove for millwrights using shop milling tools like lathes and drilling presses?
Well, when it comes to drills, we don't recommend wearing gloves to begin with. But in lathes, obviously the higher cut would be the best way to go. But anything that the glove can get caught in or spun through, we don't recommend wearing gloves at all. So that's something that I think in the glove review we can discuss. Just like I said, contact your Levitt rep and have them come in with one of our sales guys and just kind of look at the application and make the determination at that point.
And to further Derek's point there, the problem with the glove is if it does get caught or any loose fibers, like loose clothing, it'll draw the hand into it. So it's a tricky one to answer.
There are gloves out there that have, in our dexterity line, that actually the fingers will rip off. But we're not a big proponent of that, and the reason for that is because let's say it doesn't work. So we kind of shy away from all that, and we just suggest not wearing a glove at all, especially with a drill, for sure.
Okay, well, that concludes the questions. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending. As mentioned, you're going to get a follow-up email that will have a link to the recording of this webinar, as well as an email with that cut level chart as well in it. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to help you out. Definitely come in and help you out with the glove review process as well. So I'd like to thank Derek for joining us and presenting to everyone today.
Thanks very much for your time.